anger can be a great motivator,
Yeah.
right? So can fear. And these two things as a coping mechanism can force someone to get things done.
Yeah.
Once those emotions become too controlling, that anger and that fear turns into something really nasty.
Right.
I almost lost my family. One of the main reasons was work. There's no sugarcoating whatsoever. And at the end of the day, nobody cares.
Yeah.
If I would have lost my family, it would have been on me and me alone.
So in like Indian philosophy, they typically kind of break life down in 4 stages, and it's like 25 years each. And it's less about like the number of years, but more about the principles of each stage. So stage 1 is like focusing on learning like basic life skills. So like childhood, high school, middle school, all that stuff. Stage 2, they call it the householder stage. You're building a career, raising family, contributing to society. And in this stage, it's actually marked by like you should go after things, like material stuff, societal roles, build those up. The third stage, transitioning from societal responsibilities to a form of detachment. So you kind of move into like mentoring, teaching, advising, writing. Last stage is kind of like old age, where you're like telling stories by the fire, like you're the sage of the family type thing. What's interesting is some social scientists have looked at this and said, excuse me, a lot of people in America get caught in stage 2 of accumulation and worldly ambition. And they kind of diverge that path of like fluid intelligence and crystallized. So fluid intelligence is when you're young and able to like solve problems, think mathematically, build stuff. And that kind of declines at 40. It's interesting. We can go into this later, but across industries, that capacity usually starts to decline around 40. And then crystallized intelligence is being able to take all of these experiences and turn it into something else. And so I'm curious, A, generally, how does that land with you? And B, what stage are you kind of contemplating or wrestling with right now?
I think that's all very compatible, kind of with the way our lives generally move.
Yep.
And sometimes it's a mashup of all of them.
Yeah.
Right. To your earlier point, I do think generally we get caught up in this like building, accumulating, which eventually leads to a burnout of sorts.
Sure.
And or realization like, what am I doing this for? And that can be very scary and discouraging to a lot of people. When you finally slow down long enough to recognize how long you've been chipping away and not really taking a step back to appreciate any of it. I think that's more often the story than not. And I think the last 2 phases, if you will, also overlap more often than not. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
It's definitely an interesting framework to look at it.
Yeah.
Because you start off life and you don't know anything. You learn as much as you can, and you experience a lot of learning, right?
Yeah.
Either in the positive or the negative. And then you slow down just long enough to start actually building, using that knowledge, whatever that is, a trade or a education, or and then you're in your vocation, like you're in your like work, and we basically stay there, at least here in the West.
Yep.
Until like retirement.
Yeah.
Right. And then, I'm seeing there's a lot of crises happening there too. Cause like people stop working and they have no idea who they are because they've just become what they've been for so long, which is, this very specialized type of worker.
Yep.
They can't even enjoy retirement. Like they're antsy. They're unable to understand what comes next. And then the next years are spent in a decline of sorts.
Yeah.
When it should be kind of the other way around.
Yeah.
You work, stop, appreciate, and then how do you expand on that appreciation? Like to just be able to take it all in and mentor, as you said, and tell the stories and just reflect on what your life has been.
Right. It's interesting to see too when you look into this stuff. Like in that you mentioned that work mode. It's quite a long stretch, right?
Yeah.
30, 40 plus years or whatever. But the thread I'm noticing is that what got people to where they are with, if we're using social science, right? Like that fluid intelligence and like working hard, what got you through and up to that point, if that faculty starts to decline, but you hold on to it, it causes some suffering. And I think that is the existential fork in the road, if you will, of like being able to let go of that and then moving into more of a wiser path.
I think where that resonates the most for me, like you as a psychologist, you kind of get this. Anger can be a great motivator,
Yeah.
right? So can fear. And these two things as a coping mechanism, good, bad, or indifferent, can get someone through a lot, can force someone to accomplish things and get things done.
Yeah.
Then once those emotions become too controlling, that anger and that fear turns into something really nasty.
Right.
Fear can be crippling and anger is debilitating. And so all of that to say, what got you here is not going to get you there.
Sure.
Definitely not the same way. And that's also not to say there wasn't a lot of collateral damage along the way. It could have been a great internal motivator of sorts, but it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And so that's how I kind of read that.
Yeah. I'll give you kind of what I think I'm personally feeling as analogy, and then I'll bounce it to you to give your feedback. But, this midlife thing, I'm transitioning in a lot of ways, and it reminds me of like the whole caterpillar to butterfly thing. There's that middle stage where it's a chrysalis. It's like just a goo, but it's forming, but you don't know if it's going to make it. And it's just like, you got to wait.
It's not really doing anything.
It's not doing
anything. It's kind of ugly.
There's really no function like externally, but there's stuff going on inside the bag, if you will. And it's marked by so much, like, it's a question mark, it feels like. Not necessarily maliciously bad, or like, it's just like this season of, I don't know if waiting is the right word. It's just like
stuck.
Like, I do have a picture and a vision of like where things are going. And so my point to this is that I think I'm transitioning to that, the third stage, if you will, of this framework of like setting myself up for that third stage of like mentoring, teaching, writing. But I'm not quite like at that place in my mind. But everything that I'm doing in my life tells me that I'm going in that direction. So it's kind of like, I guess, is languishing the right word? I don't know if that's the right word.
I hear you. The nearest word that I can approximate to all that is stuck.
Yeah.
And you can be stuck in a relationship, a career. That doesn't mean nothing's happening.
Yep.
Right. And stuck doesn't have to be a bad word.
Yeah.
It's almost like I don't want to say frozen state, but I hear you. I'm just not articulating it.
Yeah.
As well, it's like stuff's happening.
Yeah.
Things are changing,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't see it.
Yeah. You know, like you're in sophomore in high school. You're like not quite the new person, like the freshman.
Well, you're not.
In the sophomore, you're
But
like,
you're still nobody.
yeah, you're still kind of like, dude, you're just
Yeah.
a sophomore. I think that's kind of what is going on.
Not quite 50%,
Yeah.
but not the new person. Yeah. It's, yeah. And that can be frustrating for us guys.
Yeah.
Who have a need to go and do. Yeah, no, I understand.
Where do you fall on that? I know there's buckets of life, right? There's professional, personal, physical. Are you checking out all of those in the same stage, or some like further along? Do you feel kind of behind in some regard in different buckets?
I mean, there's a lot of things I feel behind on. Like I wish I had realizations and insights that I have today, just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But there's no point in crying over spilt milk. Just have to be thankful that I have made those realizations and have those insights.
Yep.
I think in terms of kind of where I am, I feel like something is coming. Good. You hope, you wish, you pray.
Is that a general sense, or is it towards something specific?
It's just general. It's just general. The way I have, one of the hallmarks of my anxiety has been a need to control outcomes. It's like control people, relationships, agreements, business, like just that desire to, or for lack of better words, heavily influence the outcome causes a lot of anxiety. Yeah. And so the flip side of that, which I've been practicing and meditating and trying to live in as much as possible, is like surrender. Like we got to be someplace at 8, just let it go. Actually tell yourself you're probably not going to get there anywhere close to 8. And then I'm not necessarily focused on controlling the outcome, and there's no anxiety. Yeah. There's a lot of things that come with that. There's a lot of really good moments for connection and insight. And so I guess I'm just trying to navigate that theme in every aspect of my life.
Oh, yeah.
Which is hard. It's really hard. It's hard on a personal and relational level. It's definitely hard on a business level.
Sure.
Super hard.
Sure.
And frustrating. I saw something the other day, and we get to the close of the year. Everyone's talking about New Year's resolutions. Totally important to have goals and ambitions, because if you don't, you have no way of knowing what it is you need to do to change to try to, reach those outcomes.
Sure.
And where would we be as a society without goals and ambitions? I mean, that would be a huge problem. For someone like me who has historically lived and died by that and tried to force those outcomes by sheer will and just been unable to, kind of going in another direction now. So the direction is not no goals and no ambitions, but I'm kind of just letting God do the goal and the ambition setting and fill in all the blanks in between.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or at least I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Right. Because at the end of the day, we all know what needs to be done. Generally.
Yeah.
Let me just work on one brick at a time. I'll let him focus on the rest of the bricks.
Yeah. It sounds like they can coexist, like the ambitions and the flexibility of a path. So with this new direction, are you getting feedback from friends, family, colleagues on the different approach?
We'll see somewhere around July and August.
Are you expecting feedback? Are you just kind of flying under the radar with a new kind of vibe that you're bringing to your interactions?
I'm hoping it'll happen organically.
Yeah.
Just to let me know, like, hey, nothing's going right, but it's okay. Whatever that looks like on a business level, on a like, hey, we're not doing as well as we should, but I think it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, we have this, and this in place to correct that. Yeah, I don't even know if I'm making sense. And it's not some crazy voodoo.
Yeah.
I just think that my clock is ticking.
Oh, I see.
And I don't want to spend another year the way I spent the last 10.
Yeah. So the reward value of how you've been isn't the same, of like trying to control everything.
Too much collateral damage.
Have you forecasted anything that might throw you off your perch and go back to your old ways?
Probably just habit, routine.
Yeah.
You know, the first number that's not hit.
Yeah.
I think it's easiest to see in a business perspective.
Sure.
Because it's just much more easily quantifiable.
Yeah.
You know, the number is 500,000, we did 300. The number is 1 million, we did 800. Oh, we failed or we came up short.
Sure.
It's very, very easy to quantify failure.
Yeah.
Because they're numbers, right?
Yeah.
But across the board, it kind of works the same way, right? Generally.
Yeah.
And we put a lot of energy. Like my body, my soul,
Yeah.
my well-being, my blood pressure, all of it,
Right.
to try to get this number.
Yeah.
And it's like, here's the number.
Let go after that.
Everyone knows what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah.
You know?
There's the Zen guys, they say let go or get dragged.
Yeah. I mean, it's a more poignant and supernatural take on go with the flow.
Yeah.
Like you're just not going to go with every flow. Sometimes you got to go with the flow.
This approach, is it easy for you to drop in on your own, or are there proximal influences or people around you that kind of like remind you that it's possible to do this? Literal or figurative or mystical people?
We were talking last night and I was reading a journal from 2 years ago.
Yep.
And there's nothing I could have done to bring about the outcomes I begged God for in those journals. And yet they kind of just happened.
Yeah.
And so I'm barely in control of myself. I am in control of nothing else. I say barely in control of myself. It takes all my energy and time and faculties to take captive my thoughts and to challenge them and to, do the right thing when doing the right thing is hard, because doing nothing is so much easier. Controlling all that takes everything. What else am I going to control? I can't control anybody. I can't control how people view me. I can't control that people even view me.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I would have realized that 10 years ago, but it's fine. Because the only thing that got me there is all that pain and all those hits.
Right.
And so it's, coming about a, full circle.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So when you, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, does this still feel like a forced execution? Like it's a willpower thing at this point?
No, but I think it's a lot more spiritual than I give it credit for. And I've been knocking on that door intermittently. But there's a force at work in my life.
Yeah.
Constantly. And
I don't think that's a big deal to be aware of that and believe it though.
Well, it's funny. Again, we talk about quantifying things.
Yeah.
Cracking open that journal from 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and just kind of seeing where I'm at now. I mean, you want to talk about miracles?
Yeah.
Like what is a miracle?
That's a good question.
Is it just raising a man from the dead? Is that the only definition of a miracle?
No.
Is a miracle something that could have only happened supernaturally? Or is it something that could have happened 40% supernaturally? Does it make a difference?
Yeah.
Like, as we think about these things.
Yeah.
So it's like the unthinkable happened. It was unthinkable to me.
Yeah.
Subjectively.
Sure.
And probably objectively too. But it happened. I didn't do it. Who's responsible for that? How many of those moments do we have in our lives, truly?
Sure.
Dozens. How many are we paying attention to?
Yeah, I was going to say when you asked the question, what is a miracle? The first thing that came to my mind was remembering what is accurate.
Say more. Remembering what is accurate.
Yeah, because I think we just get so caught up in the stories we create. Or our bodies are stuck in some type of pain or maybe even trauma. And the lens thing you brought up the last episode is like we're seeing
and it distorts.
It just distorts what is accurate, and we start believing those stories. And so I think, yeah, obviously the big miracles are like your journal entry or even the birth of a child. Like what has to happen for that to actually happen is a miracle. But the small things, you mentioned there's a dozen things happening every day. We just don't pay attention to it. I think those are the tiny miracles that make up a life. And if we pay more attention to them more often, life can start to feel more like a miracle than not.
I think taking into account all of that, it's not easy, but I think kind of forcing myself to live there is a worthy exercise. Because hopefully I'll document everything that happens. And 2 years after that, I'll be like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Happen again.
And I think the default too is to kind of not pay attention.
Life, distraction, job, for sure.
And so that kind of detracts us from, even just acknowledging the miracles. Yeah. I want to transition us. I'm going to kind of define something that we talked about last night, and then we can unpack as much or as little as we personally want to. The dark night of the soul is a profound experience, often described as a period of intense spiritual and emotional struggle. It's coined by the Catholic mystic Saint John of the Cross. It refers to a phase where a person feels disconnected from their sense of purpose, belief systems, or even identity. Psychologically, this experience can be likened to a deep existential crisis, pushing individuals to confront their fears, doubts, and inner shadows. Spiritually, it's often seen as a necessary process for growth and renewal, where the stripping away of superficial attachments leads to a deeper understanding of oneself and the divine. If I trace back, there were 2 dark nights of the soul for me. One was really young, like 18. Looking back, it's minuscule now, but it was a breakup over a girl I was dating. Took a razor blade to my body, it wasn't a real threat, like to bleed out or anything. It was just a cry for attention, I think. But that was one of like, yeah, none of this is worth it type of thing. More recently, I was involved with my marriage. And I think just because of the weight and gravity of that experience, it literally felt like the rug was pulled out from my feet. And the definition, like losing worlds that I once knew and then having to confront my inner shadows was probably the hardest experience I've had to go through. And I think going back to the butterfly or the caterpillar butterfly, I think I'm in that chrysalis stage of like taking that experience and then trying to be an alchemist of some sort and turn it into something, I don't even dare say better, but different. It's very vague, but that's the best I can come up with right now. But it's very hard to describe. Like when you read it as defined, it's like, okay, that checks out. But when you experience that, it's definitely an invitation to depths that you probably weren't aware of.
Because you've never been there.
Yeah. And it's hard, like it says, you're getting invited into confronting things that you haven't confronted, and almost rebuilding a world, your subjective world, I think has been the most interesting and most difficult. Where does that fall with you?
Just to use your analysis, your analogy of the caterpillar to the butterfly, I think all of this is the period before that chrysalis.
Mm-hmm.
Because right before the chrysalis, if I understand it correctly, there's a period of deep pain. Like the chrysalis is just kind of
hanging out,
frozen in time. There's stuff happening, of course, and it's probably uncomfortable, but like, if there's a realization like, I can't move, it's being taken away from me, what's happening? And I have experienced that. And if I can expound upon it, I think it's, I think the reason why it's an invitation, because it's almost like, hey, this is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
How deep do you want to go?
Yeah.
And I actually just read up about it briefly. This Dark Night of the Souls is a poem he wrote.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In Christian theology, this is akin to a sanctification process. And another word for that is purification. Right. And when you want to purify gold, what do? You stick it in the fire. When you want to purify water, what do? Boil it. And as that relates to people, it's kind of like, a crisis happens, something earth-shattering. And then we do our thing, right? There's a lot of mourning, there's a lot of loss, there's a lot of self-loathing. Then we're invited, essentially, to kind of assess who we believe we are, who we believe God is, and to go on a journey that's still going to suck for a while. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like you do it, like this dark night of the soul, this can be 2 years. Yeah. I think that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Even that gold in that water, like however long it's in the fire, it's really hot.
Yeah.
Just 50 seconds, a minute. And so I think a lot of people are going through or have had those moments. And for lack of resources or lack of insight fail to accept that invitation, I know, like, we accepted the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what sucks the most, because once you do, it doesn't end the next day.
Yep.
It's a whole lot of now what? But that's the process of purification and sanctification, right? Until all of it's gone. Or until something new is built to replace the old.
Yep.
And it's not a matter of being better, but it is different.
Yeah.
And I think it's special.
For sure.
And not mostly, it's necessary. I don't know if any of this is making sense.
No, I'm following.
So yeah, it resonates a lot with me. And it really does give you an opportunity to build. I mean, because that subjective reality is all that matters.
Yeah.
Right. That subjective world, that's all you've known.
Right.
It's all anyone knows. Like, all they know is what they go home to, what they have at work, what their friendships are. They don't know other people's experiences. They're not living other people's experiences. Right. So when that all comes crashing down, it's almost like we rush to rebuild what was lost.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to do that.
Right.
It all came crashing down for a reason.
Yeah. That's a survival tool.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, it's manic. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's just reactionary.
Yeah.
And I was there too, but not until you realize, no, this was really not good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Raise the whole thing to the ground, start all over. And as that pertains to self, I think in my opinion, that's the darkest night of the soul.
Tell me more.
When you realize who you thought you've built, it just kind of happened. It evolved.
Yeah.
In the day-to-day, 30, 40 years in the making, this is who I became. And I thought I was a pretty good person.
Yeah.
No. I think when it's just you in a room with your thoughts and God, and he's like,
there's nowhere to hide.
No, you're completely exposed.
Yeah.
Because we do a great job hiding from people.
Mm-hmm. And from ourselves, really.
It is like they're both one and the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's the dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
I think that moment when you're like, all the hurt, all the pain, all the accumulation, wherever it went, I just built around it.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was a terrible foundation. So that realization that, like, I can't live like this anymore, but I don't know where to start.
Yeah. Like,
who am I? And I've heard, and this is a really good analogy, and I've seen it, is for people kind of battling addiction. Because it's just a little bit more tangible because it's a substance.
Yeah.
Your entire life, or for however many years, this thing has been the bedrock of your coping, of how you do life, how you interact, how you address pain and hurt. And then once addicts because nobody else can make the decision for them, once they make the decision, I'm done. That's the dark night of the soul. That's that life crushing, like, well, how?
Yeah.
How am I going to do it without this substance, this thing,
Sure.
insert drug of choice, whatever, that they have used to be happy, to be sad, to cope with being sad, to make them happy.
Mm-hmm. It's gone now.
It's like that was their subjective reality.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, it's just tangible because it's a thing. But you don't need to have an addiction to have that dark hour of the soul.
Sure.
Where when you're just like now asking yourself, where do I even start?
Yeah. There's this Russian poet, I forget his name, but I remember his line. It says, any idiot can face a crisis. It's the everyday that grinds us down. And in the context of what we're talking about, for me personally, like the dark night of the soul or the dark hour of the soul, look, like it was quite energizing in a very probably destructive way. So I was like engaged with it. Like, but now there's some time between the event and now, and it's like I didn't forecast the non-inflammatory day-to-day experience of this, of like staying in the game. I think might even be harder than being in the thick of it because it was so energizing. Like
It's adrenaline.
Yeah.
So I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, you're kind of, the body does what it can.
Yep.
But all this other stuff is happening.
Mm-hmm.
No one's talking about it.
Yep.
And then you have a breakdown.
So I guess I bring that up to maybe we can kind of go from, I guess, experience and philosophy of this concept into like what's actually helped us the most. This is not a unique thing, especially at midlife. These, midlife crisis things happening for thousands, if not millions. So what helped and what continues to help for you?
I mean, I think a general framework is important for anyone who's like battling with deep loss or trauma.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing is that it's going to be okay. I heard that a lot and I dismissed it.
Mm-hmm.
But now I wish I just listened a little bit more intently. Like, this too shall pass. It will. Mm-hmm. It will. That doesn't mean everything's going to go back to normal. But we just talked about that. We don't necessarily want that. Right? But everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, there is a way out. I think it's a better way. I think it's a new way.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pardon
a new way.
play on words there.
Yeah.
But there is another way.
Yeah.
In a way that you just might not have ever thought about because you're so busy doing life and going through pain and hurt and loss one way.
Yeah.
And the third thing is it's going to take time.
Mm.
It's just going to take time. Nothing that took 40 years to create is going to be unwound in 40 days.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Super general framework.
Mm-hmm.
It's
yeah.
like,
yeah.
Everything's going to be okay. There is another way, and it is going to take time.
Yep.
Those are three objective truths.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the situation is. And then each one of those you could unpack for days and days and days.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad idea.
Yeah.
For another
episode.
I mean, those three bullet points, I think they're kind of huge.
Sure.
Like the realization that everything's going to be okay, that takes months
Mm-hmm.
sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
The realization and the discovery that there's a better way.
Yeah.
There's a new way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what you know or have been used to, but it does exist.
Yeah.
is incredibly encouraging.
Yeah.
Just by itself. But that also takes months and months and months. And that third one, like, it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
Deep hurts and traumas take a long time. They do. You just got to be okay with that.
Were those 3 points something you kind of saw early on, or is that more hindsight? Is afterwards?
But at every step of the way, it's playing a lot of stuff back.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It really will be.
I think for me, in no particular order, if I'm thinking about tools that have helped, one is more of like a sports psychology tool. So it's like play back your whole life and create a top 10 list. For me, it was kind of just remembering my wins, because the negative self-talk was so deep at a certain point, like in self-worth was just like in the toilet, that like this tool just helped me remember, not necessarily even like believe in real time, but just remember the wins. So it's like anything top 10 from sports to business, and just writing those down. The second one was staying physically active as much as I could, of just lifting weights, running. That act alone just kind of helped turn off a lot of the stuff, because like a forced meditation. So maintaining physical practice. And third was, like we've talked about this, the stillness, like meditation and prayer, particularly on the meditation side, of being able to sit and like basically make contact and take impact from difficult emotions and thoughts. I think really graduated my ability to expose myself to those things. But off the top, I think those would be my three, as like more on the ground tools. I think you provide a great framework generally.
I love those, because like your last two, staying active and being still, those fit into my number two, which is there's a better way.
Yeah.
There's another way.
Yeah.
To just reframe everything you've been doing. And those are very, very like practical things. Even top 10 lists, celebrating the wins. I think that's number two as well.
Yep.
And sometimes that might take people number three, which is it's going to take time. We're not necessarily habitual in the right ways.
Yeah.
We're really, really good at bad habits.
Yeah.
Good habits, not so much.
Right.
But you could write a top 10. It could be the same top 10, 365 days of the same year. Yep. And that in and of itself, that's like, you got 10.
Yeah.
Not 2, 10 things, 10 massive wins in your life. That by itself is a miracle.
This was about 2 weeks ago. I made the decision to kind of revamp my LinkedIn, like brush it up. And I used some tools, right? And just inputted some AI tools, kind of made it easier on my life. But it did have an impact on me, like kind of retracing where I've been and what I've done. It was almost like a reminder of like, hey, like take a moment and remember these things. And so alongside with the top 10 list, I definitely felt and continue to feel, when I can remember the wins, there's like a change, a state change in me. So that's when I continue to use pretty regularly. Before we move on, I wanted to ask you this dark night of the soul. We've been kind of talking about it on the personal level. Does it apply professionally?
Sure. I think now in hindsight, and I'm only saying this because it's in hindsight, nothing professionally matters. So your question is, does the dark night of the soul apply professionally? And the answer is yes. There are times, projects, things that are really hard realizations, for sure. The reason why I just said it is my personal belief, and I think I'll live the rest of my life like this. professionally, business-wise, I don't believe there's too many examples of anything that can be as earth-shattering as the deep personal traumas, losses of relationships, loved ones. Like, if I just had to put them in two baskets, the one can never stack up to the other.
And you're talking about like personal to professional?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of professional watershed moments out there for people. I'm not taking away from that. You're asking me if there's a dark night of the soul moment. When I look back at everything I've been through, work doesn't matter. You would take 1,000 work losses over one personal one that you've endured in your life.
Sure.
Am I wrong?
No, that checks out with me for sure.
You would take 10,000 to prevent that one personal.
Yeah.
So all of that to say, hard work is important. Working hard is very, very important. Creating and building sustainable wealth and resources for people, super important.
Yeah.
Like, where would we exist in a society without it?
Yeah.
I'm just saying that at the end of the day, your heart, your mind, your body, and your soul will matter infinitely more than a professional achievement.
That's interesting. It reminds me of, well, for you, like, I'm just imagining.
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I had an interaction with someone the other day, and it was really weird for me. For me. And it was from someone that I didn't expect it to come from. And it's okay. I'm not saying this to judge anything. We all have different opinions, but he said something like, "I love winning." And I was like, "That's great. Winning's not everything." And I don't know who's going to see this, so no judgment. I've made those remarks and those statements. I think it was in the context that it was made. I was just really taking it. I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
No. Yeah, everyone loves winning. So do I. So what? Yeah, winning is great.
Yeah.
We love to win. Winning is good. Winning is fun. But it's not everything. It's just not. It's not.
Where I was going with it was, I think because you have put effort into life or lives outside of work, it kind of level sets your relationship to work. If all you had was work, I imagine it could be a different response.
Look, I say this to you a lot, and you've seen it. I almost lost my family. One of the main reasons was work.
Yeah.
Let's not even
sugarcoat it.
There's no sugarcoating whatsoever.
Yeah.
The amount I invested in my company and my business almost cost me my family.
Yeah.
Some people know because they were there.
Yep.
Most don't. And at the end of the day, nobody cares.
Yeah.
If I would have lost my family, it would have been on me and me alone.
Sure.
And no one's going to help me bear that burden.
Yeah.
So asking these questions again in light of that real thing.
Sure.
Yeah, no, work doesn't matter. Not that much. Again, don't take it out of context, anyone watching. I'm not saying go quit your job and money is stupid and burn. No, no. In just a very limited scope of would I be willing to do that again? The answer is absolutely not.
Sure.
No.
Sure.
No.
I think to your point, working hard, having ambition is very important. And to our earlier framework, right? In the four phases of life, there's a season where should be the focus. But extending your own personal example out to what I've learned is Robert Waldinger. He wrote The Good Life. He's a psychiatrist.
We've talked about him before.
And he did like this study out of Harvard. It's like, thousands of participants and followed them until they were 85.
I was going to say it was a long study.
I think it's the longest, but I think.
Which is so important because there's no coincidence.
Right. And Coben, you can fact check me on this later, but I think the first one is like the mark of a good life is love and connection. Then the other one's like don't smoke, and just like some pretty basic life advice. But I think what I'm trying to get at is I don't think they need to be separate. I think you can kind of be productive, do things you want to do, have healthy goals while cultivating a healthy relationship with yourself and others. Which is like, it sounds so simple, but
it does. And that's like what we need to do a better job at being intentional about.
Yeah.
And
like in parallel versus like compartmentalized.
100%, when I was busy winning,
yeah.
you just kind of get into a mode and you go.
Mm-hmm.
Like I never thought to myself, I can't wait to almost lose my family.
Yeah.
No one has that conversation. So it's just about being intentional about the other thing and understand that there is a balance.
Sure.
And it's okay that there's a balance.
Mm-hmm. We could do a episode on this, but balance. A, I think it's very subjective. And B, I've been thinking about balance in light of contrast. So let me explain what I'm thinking here. Historically, I have thought about balance, and maybe others have thought of it like equal ratio. Like if I spend X amount of hours on this, then I need to spend X amount of hours on Y. But I think the contrast for me is better because the intensity of experience is what I'm looking for versus the duration of the experience. So like I used to think, man, if I work for this amount of hours, I need to spend the same amount with my kids or with my wife or on myself.
That's a great way to look at it though, because like if I would have done that, that could have been my saving grace.
Yeah.
If I was just asking myself, hey, in general, work got the best of me, family got the rest of me. That was just in general.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very, very far apart from balance.
Sure.
So I wasn't even having the conversation like, hey, I'm giving work 4 to 5 hours. How much am I giving each kid? I wasn't even having that conversation. Yeah. It was just work got everything. They just got the leftovers. The leftovers were pretty nasty.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But just having that kind of an intentional conversation with yourself could have saved me a lot of heartache. Could save someone watching.
Just having those thoughts or even the awareness of that is probably changed the trajectory. Because
most people, when they have those thoughts, because they get that awareness, will be like, I need to slow down.
Yeah.
My life and my family is not guaranteed. Mm-hmm. The time what I have with the time that I have with them, I'm not guaranteed that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how am I going to give work 8-9 hours and go home and give them 1?
Yeah.
That's really lopsided.
Sure. Yeah, for me, extending that balance piece, and I don't know if this is gonna kind of tie in together, but I'm gonna say it anyway. But contrast for me has been interesting because like 60 minutes or 30 minutes of like direct experience, like intimate experience, even if it's short, has an exponentially like larger return for me than, let's say, even like a trip to Disney. So I'm working with that because I just used to think about it differently of like as much time as possible versus now it's like if we can have like direct experience, like intimate, no phones.
It's just
shorter.
Quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Because it's different. A day at Disney, you're having great experiences. Everyone's having fun. Those are memories. Awesome.
Right.
But who's having the connection? You and your kid or the kid in the rides?
Right. Yeah.
So I hear you loud and clear.
And yeah, so like, yeah, the contrast piece is something I'm working with. Is like, I know for me personally, this may not be for everyone, but shorter, higher quality has a long runway for me versus just being around someone but not totally there.
I think that's the case with everyone, man.
Yeah.
I think the quicker we all realize it,
Yeah.
you're spot on.
Yeah. So this is probably gonna be the last one we do before 25. And I want to close out with something called the Hedgehog effect, and we can kind of bounce ideas off each other. Classic book, right? Jim Collins, Good to Great. He revolves the concept of simplicity and focus, suggests that successful companies excel by identifying what they can be best at, understanding their economic engine, and aligning with what they're deeply passionate about. By concentrating on the sweet spot, businesses can achieve sustained greatness like a hedgehog that focuses on a single, effective defense mechanism to thrive. So we can go professional and business or personal philosophy. But going into the new year, there's this kind of like energy of like fresh slate. The tendency is kind of like, okay, let's kind of gather the hacks, secrets, and strategies to kind of like explode or exponentially grow or not. But I'm wondering, like, for you, and you can take this any way you want, professional and personal, what's your hedgehog that you kind of like bank on? And you're like, I know this is going to be reliably effective for me going into 25.
My energy is a gift from God that I've always had. And it allows me to help motivate and encourage people.
Yep.
I'm really good at that. Think realizing everything I'm not good at and understanding why. I just need to live there in 25.
Yeah.
I know what I'm good at.
Yeah.
And I'm not really picking up too many new skills. And that's fine. That's fine. Not like these guys are like, I wake up at 3 a.m. and I read 7 books and I've drank a gallon of water by 6:15. And okay, great.
Yeah.
I need 8 hours of sleep. Like, I know what I'm good at. And of course, I want to try to get good at more things. No one's saying to stagnate on growth. Not at all. I think the real growth is understanding what I'm bad at and why. And for me, it's a lot of emotional mastery.
Okay. On the side of learning what you're not good at?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just understanding what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
And what does that have to do with everything around me?
Yeah.
Most of the time, little or nothing. And still be able to execute at a really high level.
Sure.
Despite those feelings.
Does that map over to both for you? Are you going into next year?
Probably generally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm surrounded by really, really good high level people, VPs and directors, and they all know what they're really good at. Let's focus on just understanding the things that we're not good at and why. I mean, that's just a massive improvement right off the bat.
Is that hard? Like as a team, a collective?
I just think in general, people are scared of what they don't know in general. We know this. And a lot of people don't know what they're not good at or don't understand why. And that's scary. Just engaging that is the first step to getting good at it.
Yeah.
I'd rather know 3 things I'm not good at and understand why than learn 5 new things.
Yeah. Are you bleeding that into your team?
I hope so.
Do you think from your perspective, is it easier for people to like gain more than to kind of sit and think back, okay, where are my opportunities for growth or whatnot?
Again, because we're, by nature, we just don't want to shine a light on the ugly things. Just by nature. Yeah. We'd rather keep trucking along and pretending. And we did this exercise actually 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Nice.
Make a list, 3 things. What worked this year and why did it work? 3 things. What didn't work and why didn't it work? And I really just want to focus there.
There's a kind of last piece, and then we'll close. Coben, can you help me out a little bit, or you have your laptop or phone? Can you look up the regrets of the dying? I think there's like 4 or 5 points.
I missed what you just said this was, but I heard everyone. Sign me up.
Yeah, I think she was a nurse practitioner or doctor that interviewed people in their last weeks and said, and then she labeled it the regrets of the dying.
Yeah, nobody ever said, man, I wish I spent more time at the office.
Right.
Man, I really, I wish our market cap was 125 million instead of 100. No one says that stuff.
Yeah.
Not on their deathbed.
Yeah.
Unless they're really messed up.
Yeah.
Is it safe? Am I allowed to say that? You're the professional here. Can I say that if you're on your deathbed and you regret not making more money, you had some issues?
Yeah, there's probably something going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because the internet's going to hate that. No, it's what was the name of that book, or it was a study, or what?
I know that it's like it might be a book, but I know it's titled the regrets of the dying.
So she just interviewed, a professional, a doctor or a nurse practitioner,
Yep.
just interviewed people on their deathbeds.
Mm-hmm.
Just asked them simple questions. And it was like, what do you regret the most?
Yeah.
And work did not pop up one time, probably.
Right.
It was always a broken relationship with a sibling or a child.
I guess where I was going with it was that's kind of like over a lifetime. Could we bring it down to 25? Would there be a kind of bullet points for you as like, I would regret X, Y, Z in 25 if I did not do them or if I did do them, either direction. Is there anything that comes up for you in 1 year?
Yeah. If I didn't have deep, serious, and frequent connections with my wife and kids,
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking like every day.
Yeah.
Might seem pretty lofty, but I've lived so long the other way.
Yeah.
And look where that got me. Yeah, I would have a deep regret.
Yeah. Daniel Pink just wrote a book about regret. And from what I gather, I haven't read it, but he says regrets reveal what you care about.
Mm.
And I was like, that's such a great reframe of like,
Course.
because regret is usually like, dang, I messed up, or I wish I did this, which that's part of it.
Sure.
But the backside is very beautiful in the way it's like, no, actually, that's what you care about. So go there.
Yeah.
Go there. And I check out with you. If I had to shrink that down to a year, it's like connection. Like prioritize that. Both wife and kids and like close friends. Like do that.
And myself.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And myself.
Yeah. That's the priority. Connection is 2025.
I like that.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
I love you.
Love you.